Recording in progress.
Hey, if you have pushed play, you are once again listening to the Cognitive Fitness Coach podcast. I'm your host, Cognitive Fitness Coach Chris Norris. And today I'm here with Andrew Mayne, a veteran, endurance athlete, and mindfulness advocate whose journey is all about resilience and transformation. After serving deployments in Iraq with the Army National Guard, Drew faced challenges with addiction, but rebuilt his life through education, mindfulness, and ultra running. He now works in cybersecurity and clinical treatment while also building a mindfulness program for athletes and executives. Drew's story is about pushing limits, honoring his best friend, and proving that no matter how far down you go, you can always come back stronger. Drew, welcome to the podcast. How's it going, man?
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, it's great to be here. It's going
I'm
well.
dude, I'm so honored and flattered that you would take the time to come on my little podcast here as you prepare this week final preparations for the Arizona 300, which is a 300-mile trail race, point to point through Arizona. Am I correct?
Yeah, it goes it's actually it got rerouted so it's going north to south. And it ends at Patagonia. So we come down, we go through Tucson, and then the finish is down in Patagonia. So it should be an
Wow.
exciting time. Yeah.
Dude. Yeah, and I looked it up a little bit, and like the majority of the race is on single track trails.
Yeah, I think the toughest part is going to be I think 95% of it is exposed. So just dealing with that sun. It looks like the temperatures, they're looking pretty good for next week for the start, but
Mm.
or actually this week now. But so yeah, but still, that sun exposure it gets you. So that should be a challenge.
Wow, dude, that's amazing. So we're going to talk about that more in a bit, but first let's rewind a little bit. And you're originally from Massachusetts, correct?
Yes, yeah. I grew up in a town, Reading, Massachusetts. It's about 15 or 20 minutes north of Boston.
Okay.
Yep.
I grew up about 3 hours west of Boston in Albany, New York. So we should,
Okay.
we should do
Yeah.
that as well. I used to go out to Boston about once a year to go to the New England Aquarium.
Oh, beautiful. There
My
you
thing,
go.
bro. Growing up, I loved fish. I was going to be a marine biologist at one point. I told everyone. And
Yeah. Oh, the kids love the aquarium. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, it's cool. So then you're from a big hockey family, right? How did that shape your mindset growing up in a big hockey family?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, he grew up playing in Malden, Mass. They had a great team back then. I went to they got inducted into their high school Hall of Fame, his team, I think from his senior year. But yeah, that was a few years back. But my dad grew up playing and he was really good. And then I am the oldest of four boys and we all played. And I think, growing up in Reading, we were like the best public high school team in the state of Massachusetts and probably New England. And so it was a real competitive town. Hockey was just, everything around there. And so I think, that really. I always say a lot of people ask, about the ultra running, oh, it
Yeah.
must be the military, it must be that the military that formed you into this. And even thinking back further, I mean, obviously, the military, toughens us all up a bit, but
Yeah.
I do think like hockey plays a big part because they say hockey players are pretty soft up here, and it's I think there's some truth to it because I think that really kind of toughened me up as a kid, and I think that's where kind of all that perseverance and overcoming adversity comes
Yeah.
from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hockey's just is that's a tough sport, man. I'm thinking of the joke of like I went to a fight once and a hockey game broke out, but
Yeah, right.
but
And
it's
I,
a
yeah,
violent sport too. There's a lot of stuff going
yeah,
on on the ice that
yeah.
people that I didn't really quite know until I started going to games with the Albany River Rats. And they were like the farm
Okay.
team, the Jersey Devils, and I used to get like
Yes.
boards and the stuff that like you don't see on TV that's happening, dude, during a hockey game. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah. I love the game. In my opinion, there's nothing better than playoff hockey. It's just, it's
Mm,
just it's always a battle. So
yeah.
yeah, definitely. I grew up. I think I started playing at about 5 or 6 years old, and then I played up through college. I played, I stayed at the first school that I went to for 2 years where I played hockey. Actually, in Worcester, Mass, Assumption University or Assumption College now. So
Okay.
yeah.
What were you going to college for?
Assumption, I went there. I think my major was partying. But I did go, but I did go, but I did go, I ended up going back and graduating from UMass Lowell with a business degree. So yeah, I went
Nice.
back there and yeah, got my undergrad in business.
So in the partying at college at some point 9/11 happens.
Yeah, so
You
I
were in college.
left. Yep. So I left Assumption. Next semester, I took some courses at a community college just to, keep the classes going. And I remember I was at the I was at the gym, Gold's Gym in Woburn, Mass, and we're
Mhm.
just in the middle of a workout, and you could up on the TV, you saw the planes, hit the
Mhm.
buildings, and yeah, I just had this sense of, all right, something's going to be done. And that kind of motivated me. That's when I really
Yeah.
started, looking at joining. So
Yeah.
I remember I had a recruiter, over to my parents' house. I was going to go active, airborne, infantry, like all the, I was all
Hmm.
highly motivated. And I remember my parents were like, all right, let's pump the brakes a little bit. But so there was a few months in there, and eventually, that's when I ended up signing on with the Army National Guard.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Cool. So I mean, and many people were motivated by that, the 9/11, and recruitment was certainly not a problem after 9/11 happened. I was super lucky to be already in and working with Naval Special Warfare when that whole thing happened. I was actually out on the ocean on a high speed assault craft at the time it happened. And then within a year, I was in Afghanistan working
Wow.
there, multiple deployments, yeah, with doing direct combat support with Naval Special Warfare. So you drop out of college, you decide to join the Army National Guard after 9/11, and then you do some deployments, right? Did you go on deployment?
Yes. Yep. So I did a 15-month deployment in 2006, 2007. So that was, right around during the surge. And then I
Mm-hmm.
went back again 2009 to 2010, which was like right around the time of the when we were pulling out of Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. So those are long deployments, man. 15 months, that's no joke. Um,
Yeah.
Back to my
Yeah.
experience again is like I did when we went to the combat zone, it was like 6 months there, and then we were right back out. So it was like long enough that we got into a nice groove and we were operating a lot. We were going outside the wire like 5 nights a week on average. And yeah, so it was
Yeah.
intense, but it was short and intense. When I always felt for like the conventional forces where they were like, "Oh, you guys are nuts," and I was like, "Man, no, like we only go out at night. Like we got tons of technology and tons of resources." And I'm like, "And you guys are here for over a year, and they're getting ambushed like constantly." And yeah. So
Yeah.
you did while you were there, you were in a full convoy security in a lead gun truck, right? And like the JLTV or something, or an M.
Yeah, I think the first time around, they had some of the older models. The second time we were in a MRAP, so I think we were in the Cayman, and then the Max Pro MRAPs. So, we had like MRAP, up armored Humvee in the middle, and then the rear gun truck was another MRAP. So,
Yeah.
but that was, the 2009, luckily that was when, the vehicles were really up armored, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to back in, you might have been there over at like 2003 or four
Oh yeah,
when,
dude.
it
Yeah,
was,
dude.
there was nothing. It might as well have been cardboard, but
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, even with all the technology and money we did have with naval special warfare, when I first went over there, we were in light skinned vehicles. We were putting down blast blankets on the ground. We were actually, since the doors were light skinned anyway, a lot of people were taking the doors off of the Humvees so that they could get out easier. They didn't want to be in the thing in the event of an ambush, to whatever, take high ground or whatever it might be, return fire. But yeah, but I also was on deployment by the time I went back in 2009. And then I had a fully up armored vehicle that could take 50 caliber armor piercing rounds to the glass. It could take 10 pounds of TNT under the driver's station, so on and so forth. But it was different. It was made by Steyr. It was called a Pander. It wasn't an MRAP. It was fully enclosed. It had a remote weapon system up top. Like nobody was
Oh yeah.
exposed. It was amazing. Um,
Yeah.
but still, like, I don't know what your experience is like. Um, but I'll tell you a little bit about mine, then I'll see if there's any commonalities. I remember like just how stressful it was, just driving down these roads and thinking like, sometimes I would feel like any second now, this fucking road is going to explode and that's it.
Yeah.
So, what was it like for you?
Yeah, I mean, just being on the road, I mean, we were outside the wire on missions like basically every night. We might have got a night off here or there. But yeah, it was a lot of the same thing. And I feel like it was at times it was almost, you kind of start to get complacent because it's so quiet. But then you're just, something happens, and when it happens, shit hits the fan. And so yeah, it's a lot of long trips, a lot of long nights on the road with, nothing happening at all. But then something does happen and, brings
Yeah,
you right back into it. But yeah, I mean, and even on nights that nothing happened, say to our convoy, you're seeing up ahead. I mean, either the convoy up ahead of us or behind us was getting hit. And it's like, it's crazy to think about because, you're right behind them. It could have been, it could have easily been you. And I mean, you
yeah,
go into the intel briefs before you go out on a mission, and you see that everything's red. The routes are all red and black, and yeah, I mean, so yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely not on the roads. Not the. It wasn't the best place to be over there for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, you see the routes are all red and black, and you're asking the question like, "Are we still going out?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, we're still going." And you're like, "Holy shit!"
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
like within the first week of being there, I was in Jalalabad, Afghanistan in 2009. I was actually there on the deployment when Bo Bergdahl walked off that base. That was the
Oh,
same base, and he
yeah.
got wrapped up by the Taliban, and then Navy SEAL Jimmy Hatch got hurt trying to rescue him and such. Yeah, I was there for all that. But anywho, I remember being there and like it was like the first time we were going out, and all of a sudden there was this giant explosion at the front gate. Boom! Like fireball in the air. I was like, whoa. And then the master chief like runs off to the talk and comes back, and I'm like, are we still going? They're like, oh yeah, we're still going. I was like, holy crap, what was that? And no, what it turned out to be was one of the Afghanis was cooking his meal under his fuel truck, waiting to come into the gate the next morning, and the entire thing blew up. So anywho,
Wow.
yeah, it wasn't an IED in the traditional sense. It was someone being foolish and complacent.
Yeah, some of them were just really powerful. I mean, you'd see. One night we kind of had to cross over onto the other side of I mean, you probably Tampa, like in Iraq, like just the main
Mhm.
highway. You'd have to
Yeah,
cross over to the other side, and you look over from, an IED blast, and you could fit like what's equivalent to like an 18 wheeler in this hole,
right.
and you look at it and you're like, well, nobody survived that. It's just, yeah,
Right, right.
see some.
Yeah, I talk about like my vehicle I was in. It's like, oh, it can survive 10 pounds of TNT under the driver's station. And then you go to the intel brief and I'm like, what was the size of that last IED? And they're like, oh, it was 150 pounds. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we're done,
Right.
basically. We're smoked. Got it.
Yeah.
But again, I was really fortunate, man. Like, because again, it goes back to like we only went out at night, and I was not in. I was never in a successful ambush, put it to you that way. Like it was pretty unsuccessful. We were normally the people that were on the offensive. Like we're the guys that nobody wanted to mess with. They saw the beards, they saw all the equipment. They
Right.
went, don't screw with
Right.
these guys. Because if you screw with
Yeah.
these guys, they got close air support and they're going to level the whole village, So yeah, we didn't
Right.
really get to
Yeah.
mess with it that much, honestly. Um, but still,
Yeah.
coming back, I struggled with post traumatic stress. What about you? Did you have any after effects from all that?
Yeah. I mean, you know, definitely like struggled with PTSD and, you've trying to figure out what's what because, there's some depression in there, anxiety. You have all these different symptoms and, you go to the VA and they start handing you, a pill for this and for that. And, before you know it, like for me, I was literally getting a medication for just about everything, and one of those
Mm,
was including pain and anxiety meds. And I quickly realized that the pain meds didn't work so much for the physical pain, but more
yeah.
for the mental side of things. And
Mm,
yeah, and I just remember I was, I'd get 10 different medications and my life just started going downhill real
yeah.
fast. So it's tough because you go from, be performing at this high level to really coming home. There was an aspect of, you just come home and you're trying to figure out, where you fit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and for me, and for me too, like I was in the guards, so like I had the ability, I got my business degree in there. I did some work in the business world, and I had a job to come home to. But what was crazy for me is I remember in between. So my first deployment, I went from, we were flying, we were flying out we were about to get on the Chinook to leave Camp Taji.
Mm-hmm.
And the last day we're like, oh, we're gonna go down to the PX and buy some gold and all that stuff. And we're all safe because we're not on a mission. And all of a sudden the mortars start dropping in right around the PX.
Mm,
And I know that you get to a point where you become complacent with the mortars. You're like, oh, it's all
right.
right. But this time it's like, oh, they won't hit us. We're not going to the bunker. But this was the first time I actually move to a bunker real fast.
Yeah. Wow.
But when I stopped and thought about it, it's like that happened, and we still got out. All of us got out safely that night. And
Mm-hmm.
then from that moment, 2 weeks later, I was back in the U.S. in Massachusetts working for I was selling for an office supply company, WB Mason, and I remember I'm throwing on a suit and going into work every
Yeah.
day. And I got to this point where I'm like a month into it, I'm like, what the fuck is going on right now? Like I didn't, I'm like,
Mm,
it was so surreal. Um, and that's the first time I went to the VA. And this
yeah.
was again 2007, but I remember they said like, oh, you need a referral or something when I went in. And I was just, I was being vulnerable and I'm like, all right, I need some help. I don't know what's going on, but I basically got turned away. And I remember being like, all right, and I didn't really go back for
Oh,
God, till after my second deployment, probably like 5 or 6 years later. But
yeah.
yeah, it's just that piece of, between the PTSD, coming home and there's
Yeah.
that whole identity thing that in purpose that
Right.
you're really trying to figure out. And yeah, I could get this well-paying job, but
Mm-hmm.
it didn't really matter. I was still trying to, everything was kind of so surreal. So I feel
Yeah.
like, there was probably like a 5 year, 4 or 5 year window where it
Mm.
really, it took me some time to figure things out. And it was a struggle, for
Yeah.
sure.
Any other modalities were you able to get into, or is it just like, here's some pills? I mean, or did you do anything else with the VA?
So as far as the VA, I did eventually go to I eventually went to a few like substance abuse treatments at the
Mm-hmm.
VA, and then also I did go to the program at the VA that helped me the most was it was in Western Massachusetts, so not too far from where you grew up. But
Yeah.
at the Western Mass VA, there was a PTSD program called Ward 8. I think now it's called Ward 9. And that's when I really started really like opening up because you had a lot of it was a bunch of guys who were all struggling with the same thing, and you were just able to relate. And that's when I really opened up to like, CBT,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then and also ACT therapy.
Okay.
I could. That was the first one where I'm like, okay, so I have this. This is my goal. Am I
Mm-hmm.
moving, further away from it
Yeah.
or closer to it? And
Yeah.
that was the part of me where I was like, all right, I just don't have to go in and talk one on one. So that's the thing that really started opening me up to
Mm-hmm.
to therapy. But
Yeah.
um, and then also there's some other good resources around Boston, like the home base program.
Yeah.
Which that's when I really got into DBT,
Okay.
CBT. Yeah.
All right. So, for the audience just listening, and maybe you don't know what that is, like CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is an interplay between situations, your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. You mentioned ACT, which is acceptance commitment therapy, and you'll have to get. Can you give me a short brief on that? What ACT is? Because I know, like, I'm not exactly boned up.
So it's acceptance and commitment therapy.
Yeah.
And so you're basically like, all right, you're you're accepting where you're at, and then like you have to start thinking about like, all right, what, my goal call, so let's just say, for instance, my goal is to stay sober.
Uh-huh.
So you'd kind of like gauge where you were at with that. Like if this is the goal, in anything you do, you kind of look at it like, all right, is this moving me towards that goal? Like,
Uh-huh.
is it beneficial? Or is it moving me away from that? So you can kind of gauge where you're at.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we might have broke up a little bit there. My internet got unstable. And then dialectic behavioral
Yeah.
therapy is um, is a therapy that was made popular to treat, I believe, borderline personality disorders, and that also brings in lots of elements. It's a type of talk therapy. It brings in lots of elements of mindfulness and tools and tricks. And did you also participate in DBT?
Yes. Yeah. And that's, for me, that was really useful because even in DBT, the stop skill, where, what is it? Stop, take a step back, assess, and then proceed mindfully. For
Yeah.
me, I always used to say, I'm like, God, I wish I just stopped. I wish I just paused for a second there and didn't make that decision because, the impulses it's so strong, especially when you're dealing with anything like PTSD, where you're
Mm-hmm.
just a split second, you go from 0 to, 100, just like that.
Yeah.
And so looking back, and that's like the biggest thing I still use to this day. It's like when I want to, somebody might say something, and I always try to just like pause for a second and take a breath,
Right.
and not just respond like that. And that there's usually a better outcome when you do that.
Yeah, that's one of the tools that I practice and preach as well with clients is the stop technique. I've kind of customized it, I guess, a little bit for myself and others, where I say it's stop, take 3 to 5 deep diaphragmatic breaths, and then observe what you're feeling, observe what you're thinking, observe any emotions that are present, any bodily sensations, and then proceed mindfully. And it works so well because if we get like this charge and then we react from that charge, we're reacting from a part of our minds that is not rational. Perhaps it's in a fight or flight, or it's in some type of maybe even a freeze response or something like that. But we're not bringing online the rational part of our brain. So when we can take those deep breaths, we perhaps go from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic state. And then also, it's really magical is that observation. Like if we can articulate what's going on, again, it takes energy away from that emotional part of our minds and brings it more up to a rational part of our minds. So I just make much better decisions.
Yeah.
When
And
I'm not in a state of mind where I feel like I'm fighting or I want to run away. Go ahead.
yeah. And, on that note, so, I used those modalities kind of early on. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, after I got clean, um, I still like didn't feel there was something missing. And
Mm,
I was struggling, you know, like mentally, emotionally. And at that point in time, and what made me think of this is when you said sympathetic and parasympathetic, because
uh-huh.
so at that point in time, a friend of mine connected me with a couple guys who were actually on the SEAL teams. And he was like, my friend, I'm going to introduce you. And they have like this mindfulness meditation program and also plant medicine they
Mhm.
work with. And so that was such a game changer for me. And
Yeah.
I hope and pray all the time that eventually, Uncle Sam pushes that through and makes it accessible
Mhm.
to to everybody, not just because there's a lot of programs now that are supporting veterans around that, but that
Mhm.
was really a game changer. And not so, I mean, both going on a retreat and working with the medicine
Yeah.
and then the longer lasting thing is the mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
That's the sustainable thing. And for me, everyone always used to say, I remember, because I hear people say it all the time to me. I always said, I'm like, well, I can't meditate. I don't know how to slow my mind down. And it's like,
Yeah. Right.
and
Right.
now it's funny because I laugh at it and I'm like, that's the exact same thing I said. And,
Mhm.
when I finally realized that's not the whole point, nobody can just completely, you
Mhm.
don't just like go from that and just shut it off. But so for me, the medicine really helped me. It helped me basically realize that probably 90%, maybe more of the stuff that I was worrying about on a daily basis, it did
Yeah.
not matter. And, or it wasn't even real. Or,
Yeah.
it was just like, oh, well, this could happen. And, and it was controlling me. So, I
Mm.
remember this overwhelming sense of my first, plant medicine retreat working with
Mhm.
psilocybin and then bufo or the toad, the
Mhm.
5-MeO
Yeah.
DMT.
Yeah. Mhm.
I had this overwhelming sense of like, just everything is going to be okay. And
Mm.
it's time to stop, like, fighting.
I
And,
love that.
um, and then just this like blissful experience that yeah it really changed things. And and then following up with this meditation practice where
Mhm.
I loved it right from the get-go, because you do start the meditation work. You do that for like a month prior to going on retreat. And
Mm.
and it's for me, like, it was the first exercise was like to get you to go from sympathetic to parasympathetic,
Yeah.
go from that fight or flight to the rest and digest, where,
Mhm.
it's just a quick belly breath exercise and you're
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
tensing up, on the hold, but then
Mhm.
releasing. And
Mm.
then when you notice the contrast and, when you do what's called like the internal selfie before and after,
Yeah.
you you notice after, you're like, oh my God, my mind isn't racing, my body's not shaking, my
Yeah.
nervous system has calmed down.
Mhm.
And so now it's like I wake up, I notice, if it's noon,
Mhm.
I notice, I'm like, oh, I know what's missing. I didn't meditate this morning. But it's very
Mm.
rare that that happens, because I love meditating. I feel like I have to do it. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't have to, but it's just crazy to me at this point, not to, because
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing, man. I have not participated in plant-based medicine, psychedelic assisted therapy, although I'm very interested in it. And yeah, I've never met anyone who's done it that didn't like speak highly of it, that said that, like, I've had people say like it was the most transformational experience of their entire lives. And I found out about it originally from the special warfare community, where I had um, Navy SEALs that were telling me, like, how messed up they were before, and then they went down to Mexico or Central America or whatever, and they were doing ibogaine and DMT, and I know ayahuasca and magic mushrooms and things of that nature. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely something there that needs to be explored further. And yeah, I mean, it's a
And
shame what happened. I think they were trying to get it pushed through with the FDA, and there was some some bad things happened during that the process that are still controversial right now. And we'll see what happens, man, with the new administration. RFK Jr. seems a little more open minded to that type of stuff, and such. So
yeah, I think he's gonna be the one to get it, to push it through. But
yeah.
and it's tough too because, with the recovery community, I mean, where it is a drug, it's there in the recovery community, there's that judgment around a lot of different things. I
Yep.
feel like, and that being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, what really eased my mind is that my friend and I look at him as like a mentor in the recovery world and clinically, and I actually work for him now. But is that he's like 26 years clean,
Yeah.
and he's so it eased my mind. It's like, oh, okay. And then what's crazy is that when you go on the retreats, I'd say 95% of the people that I have gone with and I've met
Mm-hmm.
along the way in the past 3 or 4 years, either
Mm-hmm.
they're in recovery or they're just
Mm-hmm.
looking to stop drinking, or they have stopped drinking,
Yeah.
and cut back. It's just about overall health. So everyone's trying to become a better version of themselves,
Yeah.
whether they're officially in recovery or not. So it's, I think sometimes if people judge it, it's just, yeah, you really got to be open-minded to, because
Yeah.
it's changing lives, especially in the veteran community too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I am a person in long-term recovery, and today is actually 18 years for me. And so I like, yeah, I have to like ask myself like this soul-searching question of like, am I like interested in plant-based medicine because I like want to party, or is it because I really want to find more healing? And then I'm like, well, do I need more healing? Like, is it that bad? Like, I could go round and round with it. It's like a dog tissue.
Right.
So I don't know, man. Right now,
Yeah,
I'm big into mindfulness meditation. I'm big into the breath work. I'm big into uh, cold water immersion and sauna and running ultras like
absolutely.
you and having all these other things. So I'm like, man, I don't know if I really need that modality, or is there still this piece of me which will always be in there that's like, yeah, I want to party.
Well,
But it
you
probably
know
won't
what's
be a party. Like,
Yeah, and what's
it
interesting
really.
too is that, well, first, congrats on 18
Yeah,
years. That's
thanks, man.
unbelievable. And then also, I can assure you, especially for vets, it's definitely not. When I go on retreat, there's this like there's this period of time leading up to it where I'm extremely nervous. Like, I'm not really excited because
Mm,
it's not like partying, because you're definitely, especially for vets, it's like I go into it and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to face this. And
yeah.
but it's also facing it. I've been able to face a lot of stuff that I just didn't. And
Mm,
you face it in a real safe way because you view it through another lens,
mm-hmm,
instead of like just in reality. When you get that anxiety, when you think about something, or with guilt and shame. But it's
mm-hmm,
it's like a very safe space to be able to view it, and then kind of like see it and see how it's affected your life, and then just be able to move on, like
mm,
peacefully. So it's definitely difficult when you're in the medicine, but then
mm-hmm,
there's this overwhelming sense of relief afterwards,
mm.
where you just feel like you have this huge weight lifted off. But
Amazing.
again, it's that you already do the sustainable thing,
Right.
the daily thing, which is the
Yeah.
meditation. So
Yeah.
breath work.
Yeah. For myself, like I just like I guess I also get nervous is that like I would really, really enjoy it. And then it will like, and then I would like, I'm integrating into my practice. And it's like, dude, no, you're taking mushrooms every day.
Right. Yeah.
Like you're not integrating. You're back to
Right.
being what you're back to being a drug. So
Right. Yeah.
so
Right.
anyway, it's just I
Yep.
mean, I think these are you know, I'm joking and saying in a joking manner, but I think it's like a safe precaution for people to ask themselves. So like, hey,
Oh, absolutely.
what am I really getting into here? Like, and it's like
Yep.
not something I take lightly at all, you know. So
Right.
because I've been hemming and hawing about it for she's coming up on probably 4 years because as I've been out of the military and I'm in a place that offers plant-based medicine retreats and such. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I'll maintain my sustainable practices like I encourage others to do, which is for me it works
Absolutely.
is breath work, meditation, cold, heat exposure, athleticism, getting out into nature. So
Right. And so I actually do the contrast therapy, which I love. I
yeah,
mean, I especially leading up to Monster 300, that's like part of the heat training. I'm staying in the sauna a little bit longer,
yeah,
like so I've actually gone, every day for the past couple weeks. And
yeah,
but one thing I started recently, like in the past 3 months, and
uh-huh.
I saw your videos before too, and I've heard of so many people doing it, but I just never did it for whatever reason, is breath work. And
Yeah,
that has been amazing. It's like just another extremely helpful tool in the
hmm
tool belt. But yeah,
yeah.
that's been great as well.
I do that every morning. It's I have my routine is like I make my coffee and then as I'm waiting for my coffee to cool now and enough to drink it, I usually do some rounds of breath work, about 3 to 4 rounds. And right now, I switch it up some, but right now I'm big into like a Wim Hof style breath with long retentions on exhale. And I can
Yeah,
definitely feel it making a difference in my mental health as well as my running, my physical health. I feel like I just process oxygen better. So
absolutely.
yeah, cool.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about running, man. Well, how did you get into that? How did you get into ultra running?
So ultra running, I mean, I remember, well, first I still don't consider myself a runner, but which is funny, but I did when I was a kid, I guess I was like naturally good at running, but I just didn't really like it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I did like a 10K race with my dad when I was like 16. And we had like a little friendly competition, and he was a big runner. He's almost 70 and he runs every day, like 6 miles.
No
But
kidding. Wow.
I went out and I beat him then. But so I ran when I got back from Iraq, I got a number to the Boston Marathon. And I just went out. I didn't really train. I went out and I did it. And at the time I wasn't living the healthiest lifestyle, but we did it, and I'm like, wow, this is great. I can do this. And then after I had so in 2000, so I was into running in general, but at the marathon level. And then, between so like my best friend Z, his name was Paul. He passed away in 2016.
Hmm.
And he was at a half marathon in New Hampshire. He was
Hmm.
running it with his wife, and he made it to the finish line, held their hand up in the air, and then just he dropped right there, and they couldn't bring him back. And I guess he had
Hmm.
some kind of freak, heart condition. But so him and we grew up like we played hockey with each other from like six, and then in high school, and then we also
Hmm.
went to college and played hockey together. Our sons were they were born. So my 10-year-old Jude and his 10-year-old son Cam, they were born like on the same day, an hour apart. And I remember we were on the phone. I was calling them. I'm like, all right, the baby just came. Tell her to have the baby, so they can have it on the same day. And
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, we we were just really close. And yeah, he passed, and that did a number on me.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough. But he used to run a lot of like the fundraiser, like the veteran fundraiser races with me. He
Mm-hmm.
was like my only friend. He not even not being a vet, he always went out there and did it with me. And so yeah, I mean, between that and then yeah, I actually and I haven't talked about this before, and quite honestly, I have family members that don't even know just because I've always
Mm-hmm.
like kind of kept to myself. But one night, so between him dying in 2016 and then, I was getting clean around I think probably like 2017, 18 time frame, like end of 2017, beginning of 18. Um, I was, I was clean for a period of time, and I had I was having a tough time, and I remember so being clean for a period of time, I just had this again that impulse control, and I
Mm-hmm.
actually went out and I did what I thought was um, a line of cocaine, and
Yeah.
I remember I came out of the bathroom and I started, just feeling off, and next thing you know, I uh, I woke up with, firefighters, police, EMTs, all around me. Yeah, so I mean, I had that close call, and to the point where I got to the hospital, I remember, yeah, it was rough. It did a number on me. It was rough, but it also was the point when I'm like that, that's it, because
Yeah.
hearing the nurse say that they hit me with Narcan 4 times. Whew,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it was tough because, I have thinking about, the kids, and, I just felt like, yeah, I was struggling, but you know, it was like, how selfish is that?
Yeah.
But sorry, one sec.
No, you're good,
But
man. Take your time.
so, that was like a turning point, big time. And I remember, I was obviously upset. I was crying to the nurse and whatnot, but I remember this like overwhelming sense of you hear people talk about like they have this God moment or however they describe it, but it was just like this overwhelming sense
Mm-hmm.
of, kind of intuition, God, whatever that just came to me, and it was like
Yeah.
it wasn't so much like the shame and guilt of what just happened. It was more like this overwhelming feeling of like it's time. Like it's time to go and live to the fullest.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
it was pretty much, when you really think of it, it's like, it could have and almost was over right then. So it's like, you know, um, you get this second chance at life, and it's like, all right, that happened. And,
Mm-hmm.
working through the shame and the guilt of that was tough, but I was almost like laser focused on, all right, it's time to just really start moving through this. And,
Yeah.
I, and I said, I'm going to start living to the fullest,
Mm-hmm.
not taking anything for granted.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna start, and like I remember thinking, like I always had it in my mind, like I saw these ultras and all that, and but you hear, a lot of times you listen to other people, they're like, oh no, that's too hard, or that's too dangerous, or that's, this and that. And I
Mm-hmm.
got to this point where I'm like, fuck that. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do some these things that seem impossible. Like
Mm.
they're impossible to 99.99% of people on planet Earth. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna try to get into that and see what happens. And
Nice.
yeah, that's kind of where I did a
And
I did a 50K. And then I remember
yeah.
I read Goggins's book back then, and
Yeah.
I remember Can't Hurt Me. And then I remember I saw a video of him doing Moab 240, and I'm like, what is this thing? And then I remember seeing him like, these people run 240 miles. And like, how do you do that? That doesn't make any sense. I'm ready to hit the ground, after a marathon or like just that mile, like 21 or 22.
Yeah, yeah.
But so I had a friend of mine, or a mentor of mine. I mentioned it to him, and this guy is a retired Army Ranger. He has a lot of connections in like the DoD space and whatnot. So I mentioned it to him, and he said, "I'm getting you a coach. A friend of mine's a coach." And this guy was like he was a director of fitness for Secret Service, and he
Mhm.
retired. And this guy coached me. He's like, "I can get you on a plan to do like 100, but 200." That's I don't that's just I said, all right, well, just train me for 100 and then I'll figure out the rest. Um, so I remember I signed up. It was like back then it was like January 1st. And I signed up and Moab was October of that year. So I basically had 10 months,
Mm.
like you'd see her like coach to 5K and all that stuff. Like, so I I just went at it and I followed this guy's plan to a T, and I made
Yeah.
that year all about accomplishing that goal. And
Nice.
I went out, and I remember even at check-in, the medical, they ask you like, "What's the longest one you've done?" And I'm like, "Shit, I have to lie." I'm like, I can't say 50K, or they're gonna, you know. I think I said like 50 miles or something, and but yeah, and and that's when,
Oh,
and then after Moab, I'm like, wow, so it just taught me, it's like that was impossible, and I had no idea how I was going to do it, and it became possible. So that was so powerful,
yeah, man.
to me
That's
back then.
amazing, dude. Hey, I
Yeah,
noticed in your pictures, you wear the hat that has a Z on it, and that's a tribute to your friend, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Every race, all these big ultras. I went to like Lids one time because I'm like, how can I? Actually, I did it. Yeah, even back in I remember I went to Lids and I just got it. I'm like, can you like embroider a Z on a hat? Just because, his
Yeah.
name was Paul Zurich, but we called him Z, and
Yeah, yeah.
like my kid, my daughter called him Uncle Z. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I just, wear that for him just so, continue to, think of him, and, even I'll tell you like this one, like, I always like, to me, he's there in spirit all the time.
Yeah.
And especially for this one coming up. I've always had like a crew and pacers for a monster. I'm going completely
Whoa.
solo. No pacers, no crew. And
Yeah.
the way I look at it, it's yeah. I mean, so I know he'll be out there with me. But yeah, that's just like a simple way I can just honor him and know that he's
It's
with me.
amazing, man. So yeah,
Yeah.
like you say, you feel him there, and he's there. What do you think he would say to you at the start of this Arizona 300 this weekend?
Go fucking get it. Go fucking get it. Yeah.
No.
No, I mean, he just always had my back for everything, whether it was when I was struggling through my, tough times and all that. And yeah, he was there. He'd sit with me. I remember, when you ship out to MEPS for basic training, he'd sit there. We were sitting on the trunk of my car the night before I shipped out, so we just, we had a great friendship, and no, but I know, he'd be proud because,
Powerful.
kind of overcoming all this. Yeah,
It's
definitely.
powerful, dude. It's a powerful tribute to your friend. It's amazing. You're an amazing dude.
Thank
Um,
you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Getting to the start line of these ultras is a challenge, and oftentimes I say like just getting to the start, like it feels like you've won, because we as an ultra runner, I know everything you need to go through to get there. And so what are you doing leading up to this? This is the week before a 300-mile race. What does your mental and physical preparations look like?
So physical, I'm definitely winding down, and I was out in Colorado last week, and I did about 122 miles, but then like within 7 days, within 9 or 10 days. I think I did a total of 150 miles and climbed up. We did like Manitou Incline,
Hmm.
and then some of the paths up there because, Tasha's, based at the bottom of that. And so we
Hmm.
get up there, got some good elevation in, and yeah, it's so like physically that's where I'm at. But I like tonight actually, I don't know, probably like 2 hours ago, I did like 7 or 8 miles, like real slow, and then just
Hmm.
did some strength training. But I'm focused more on, I'm just trying to stay loose physically, and then I'm doing every day I'm doing hot yoga, whether
Hmm.
it's like yin or yang practice with the
Hmm.
heat. And then I'm also making sure every day I go to do the contrast therapy. And
Hmm.
then I'm just really trying to focus on sleep and
Hmm.
eating because like I've lost, usually I always said I'm like I'm gonna stop running if I ever start looking like a runner because I've always just been a bigger dude. and
Yeah, yeah.
and so and I've lost like 25 pounds leading up to this.
Wow.
Even it was funny when I saw Tasha, she was like, "Oh, you need something to eat." She's like, "What are you gonna start eating?" But yeah, so really focusing on that, getting some rest, mentally, just really staying up on the mindfulness and meditation. And I do a lot of like I believe in like visualization is very powerful for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Moab, leading up to Moab, I went there. I actually drove out there from Colorado and I went there for the weekend just to check it out so I could like get boots on the ground and like really see everything so that when I came home and sat in like my meditation, I could just envision the whole thing, like bits and pieces.
Mm,
And I even saw myself crossing the finish line. So I do a
mm,
lot of that leading up to it. And then the thing that that drives me nuts, I think, like the week or two before, is like because there's the physical and mental side, but then there's the logistic side.
yeah.
And yeah, so like this past week I've started packing my drop bags because where I'm going solo, I'm not going to have that crew,
Hmm.
vehicle, which maybe I took for granted before because now I'm realizing I'm like, all right, I just have to be overly prepared for like every situation,
Hmm.
along the route. So that's been a little bit tough, but also like even I was a little stressed the past couple days because I just started these two new jobs like a week or two ago. And so I'm
Mm.
in like that training mode where I can't manage my own schedule that much because in a sales role, usually I can be flexible, but um, so that's been tough because I'm trying to manage those and all of this. So I usually like to get out to wherever the race is like a week prior so that I can
Mm.
have that time to shut it down. But what I've noticed this week is I said to somebody, I think yesterday, I'm like, man, I can't wait to just get out there. I can't, it's very difficult to do this like domesticated stuff while you're preparing for something primal. Like it's
Right,
like,
right.
so at least when you fly out, it's like, all right, you're away from work,
Hmm.
family,
Yeah,
but my son's seen me, he's been with me like majority of the time, the past week. And so he
yeah.
sees me like, just trying to get all prepared. So it's definitely, I'm flying out like
Hmm.
early Wednesday morning. So I'm looking forward
Yeah,
to just getting out there. And then the next few days, just tightening everything up. But,
yeah. And then you start Friday morning, is that correct?
yeah, well, I think I start at 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. So
Oh, okay.
for this one, they're doing like 4 waves,
Oh, okay.
probably because like permitting maybe, but
Hmm.
they have the first group goes at 11, next group goes at 12, then I go at 1, and then the elite, the elite group goes at 2.
Oh,
Um,
well, that's kind of cool. So the elites
yeah,
will you'll get to see them. They'll catch up to you.
yeah, yeah, right.
Get
Oh
to
yeah,
high
I'm sure
five them
they'll,
on the way past. That's amazing,
right.
man. So yeah, and then once
Yeah.
you start, it's like that's it. Now you just have to run for
And that's, yeah,
5, 6 days, whatever it might be.
yeah. And see, the deal because I mean, the hardest part truly is just getting there. It's
That's
just
right.
like once, like for these ones, they always say the motto, if I get
If I get hurt,
hurt,
if I get
lost,
lost, if I
or
die,
die,
it's
it's
my
my
own damn
own
fault.
fault. So right after, and right after that, it's just like it all goes away. So I tell people when I explain, it's like like I have all this fear, leading
Mhm.
up to it. It creeps in, no matter how many you
Mhm.
do, it creeps
Mhm.
in, and I'm at that point right now where I just know like all that goes away.
Mhm.
The second we say that about it and you take off, it's done, and you're out there, and yeah. So it's really just like it's getting there and
Yeah.
and start. Yeah.
But at some point during the race, and I'm not jinxing you, but I'm sure you're well aware that there's going to be challenges, right? And
Yeah.
those challenges could take the shape of physical challenges or mental challenges. But let me ask you, like, it's kind of like almost a chicken and an egg, but it's like, what do you think normally goes first? Is it the body or is it the mind?
Um, for me, for me, it's the body.
Mhm.
Um, because I think mentally it'd take a lot to take me to it'd take a lot. I mean, but the other thing too, I mean, it's kind of goes hand in hand because um, physically, I know the only guarantee out there is going to be a massive amount of pain at some point,
Mhm.
physical and
Mhm.
mental. But for me, usually what I've noticed is my goal this time is what happens to me is like at Bigfoot 200, which I did in August. Um, the first night I went off course like
Mhm.
3 or 4 miles, and I had to climb back up, 1,000 feet, and it was
Oh my
so
God.
mentally it was like, but it was early enough on where I could make up the time. But after that,
Mhm.
my stomach started going, and I'd go about a half a mile and then puke, and then go another half a mile, puke. So I had to like, it's usually I go through a period where I have to get my stomach back on track. And
Mhm.
then it just happens to me. I don't know, hopefully this time it doesn't, but I'm used to it. And when it does, it's just, riding it out and having some, broth or whatever and getting my
Mhm.
stomach back on track. And once I do, then, I'm off and running. So there's like that
Yeah.
threshold, but then I'm going to sleep a good amount on this one. Like I'm going to intentionally, I'd say I'm going to try and go 36 hours
Mhm.
without sleeping because that'll bring me into the second night.
Mhm.
And then intentionally try and sleep like a solid, if my time's really good, I might even take 2 hours. But I'd say like I'll plan on crashing for an hour because
Yeah.
in Bigfoot, I had a lot of I fought sleeping a lot, and because of that, like the hallucinations creeped in real fast, and it was
Wow.
it was brutal. It was
Yeah.
Moab was Moab was almost fun or funny, when I started hallucinating, but Bigfoot was just it was rough. So like I just hit the ground and take like even a 20-minute nap just to reset my brain.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I did that my last ultra too. I mean, my last ultra was only 100 kilometers, but I intentionally like took breaks at all the aid stations and relaxed because I knew I was undertrained for it. I was injured leading up to it, so I went into it compromised already. But um, like so, what we talk about this suffering is often referred to as like the pain cave. And are you able are you able to articulate your like relationship with the pain cave? I know for like me, like I know it's coming, and then when it comes, I'm like, oh, like welcome, have a
Right.
seat.
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
like the
Yeah.
harder we fight it, the probably the more
Yeah.
it hurts. So, what is your relationship to the pain cave like? How do you get through that?
I think when I tell people this, I mean, you get it. So, but some people like, are you all right? I'm like, all right, it's coming at some point. So I'm like, I just welcome it with open arms
Yeah.
and then like sit in it. I'm like, I always say, and I'm not trying to be like, sound like a tough guy or anything, but it's like, I'll sit in it, bask in it, and just be there because it's coming, and um, and you can't fight it. So like it's coming, and yeah, I just try to welcome it and then navigate through it.
Yeah.
Because whatever it is, like I've realized that I think between eating, sleeping, and drinking, you
Hmm.
can if you do those things, like you can make it through most stuff. It is as bad
Hmm.
as it gets. Or
Hmm.
so like even at Bigfoot, I had my IT band always gives me a hard time on my right side, and I couldn't even walk, let alone run. And
Hmm.
I'm like, oh no, I'm like, I'm only 20 miles from the finish. Like I will, I'll crawl if I have enough time to crawl, I'll get there. But um, for that, instead of freaking out, which I started to a little bit, I laid down and I took a 20-minute nap right next to a tree. And
Yeah.
I woke up and somehow I was able to go again. And I mean, that always doesn't happen, but it's like there's no like set way to fit. You just have to be okay
Yeah.
with it coming and then just navigating through it, I feel
Yeah.
like.
Do you use any type of mantras or anything while you're running?
Um, I'll tell myself like I'll tell myself like when I'm actually out there going through it,
Yeah.
I'll remind myself that, sometimes I'll say tell myself you're the baddest MFer out here, or something just to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
myself jacked up, which
Hmm.
or like you can get through anything. Like
Yeah.
you got this, you've made it through way worse. Like so that's what's funny is that any pain I feel out there this week,
Yeah.
it it's not going to be as bad as stuff that I've felt in the past,
Right.
and
And
so yeah, I mean, yeah.
do you have like a why? Like why are you doing this, man? Do you have a why?
um yeah, I mean, I want to be able to, you know, it's like when my kids get older, I have, a daughter who's 16, a son who's 10, and then a little guy who's 18 months. And, you know, I know what I've realized is I know they're always watching, and
Yeah.
words are crap, like they're they're watching. And if I can show them through actions, and explain to them when the time comes, like my daughter knows about like my past, and my son, my 10-year-old has like little snippets, and he's about ready to hear about the past. But if
Hmm.
I can explain to them, like, hey, no matter how where you get in life and how bad things get, if you're struggling, I just want them to see like you can go from this, to doing anything that, and I tell Jude, my 10-year-old, I'm like, and I always have to Sammy, I'm like, when they say like, I can't do this, I can't, I'm like, listen, anything is possible.
Yeah.
And then obviously the best is the 10-year-old, he challenges me. He's like, well, can I fly like a bird? And I'm like, well, why do you want to do that? Like, do you just want to know what it's like to fly because you could go hang gliding or something,
Yeah.
And
Right.
but
Right.
he tries to corner me, and I'm like, buddy, within reason. I'm like, I have metal in my shoulder, so like I'm never gonna be a major league baseball pitcher,
Right.
but like yeah, so like my thing is like so they can see that, and quite honestly, like obviously my kids, they're my biggest motivation, but
Yeah.
also like just so other people, like so someday like I can, and I have gone and talked to people, but like even if I'm speaking somewhere, I can be able to show other people, like say somebody's a day sober, and they're just
Hmm.
going through it,
Hmm.
and they have zero hope. It's like, well, to have somebody just be like, hey, listen, I was right there. And then, but like,
Right.
and just have them really start to, because like, I believe, even early on, it's like, I believe people should like really start thinking, like, start dreaming. It's like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you really
Right.
want to do? And then come up with a plan and execute it. Because if you're focused on that positive thing, that's literally a dream of yours,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not going to have time to worry about and just sit in all the guilt and the shame. Obviously,
Mm.
clinically you have to get through it, but that's what I envision. And, and I think that was a big thing for me. Like even saying this, to you
Yeah.
publicly is that
Yeah.
people see me as like, now they're like, oh, this guy just runs all these races. It's like, well, and I thought, I'm like, well, that's selfish of me to not to hold that in because if it can help somebody
Yes.
else, you know, then and I'm like comfortable enough now and confident enough in myself to be able to do that. So like, I think
Amazing.
that's an important piece, for me, just to not do all this in vain or not let it, go to waste. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And you're bringing this message to people right now, but also you have plans to further bring these messages that anything is possible and bring a message of mindfulness with a program that you are developing, right, for executives and athletes. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. So, I'm planning on, I'd say probably, launching this I'd say like, the fall, about, maybe end of summer, beginning of fall.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I'm actually starting my global executive MBA program in August at University of Miami. So, like, that's kind of my timeline to be able to launch the mindfulness practice too.
Nice.
Um, and I think, I'd say by the fall, and the how I envision it is, I'm trying to build this mindfulness and meditation program that would be effective for for athletes. And
Mm-hmm.
I see like at first really focusing on like high school, college athletes,
Mm-hmm.
student athletes, because then you can like catch, kids while they're young too, instead
Yeah.
of when they're older, and then they can have this for the rest of their lives. Because like even my son, I watch him do it, and like before he
Mm-hmm.
plays football, he's 10, and he buys into it now, and he loves it.
Nice.
So. I think, that's the goal. And then also like business executives too, because I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure you see, the rat race is tough. And like, so for people to
Mm-hmm.
be able to kind of hone and and be able to get to that
Mm-hmm.
parasympathetic place, and you're just so much more effective. So like,
Yeah.
I see like high school, college students be working with them, and I think for me like I'm gonna probably try and target like maybe getting contracts with colleges like mainly around like football and hockey teams, just because I think I
Yeah.
can relate most with hockey players, and then football. They're both intense sports where
Yep.
you can and also like I see I've talked to a few like fighters too, like MMA fighters, because I think that's an effective area. This can be effective in that sport as well. And yeah, just really because it's funny. This all, and it came up in one of my retreats that I went on. I was just like,
Nice.
I was talking to my buddy, and he's like, what do you want to do? And I remember just
Mm-hmm.
saying, I'm like, continue to serve. And he's like,
Exactly.
okay. And I'm like, but I couldn't understand what that looked like because it's just like serving means we're in the military, but
Yeah. Yeah.
and you serve the country. But and then I said that I'm like, working with athletes on mindfulness and meditation,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
because after I got my master's in social work, I
That's
went to the
right.
VA, and yeah, I went to the VA for like 9 months. I'm like, oh man, I mean, with the red tape, I'm like, I feel like I'm not doing this isn't why I did it. I had intentions to like
Mm-hmm.
help people, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't, and it felt very restricting, and
Mm-hmm.
it didn't make me happy. But when I think about this, I mean, I literally, even when you brought it up, I started getting the goosebumps. So it's like, that's what I think you're looking for. And then, because yeah, I can work in cybersecurity and DoD consulting, and I'm good at selling, and I can make money in that world, but it doesn't truly make me happy. Yeah, I can provide for my family, but like this also can,
Yeah.
and then yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that, and even yeah, just launching that and just working on that, it'll be amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. And once it does launch, definitely hit me up with some links and I'll push it out to my network as well. And it's highly relatable, dude. Same way, like I'm out of the service now for 4 years and in recovery now for 18 years and into mindfulness meditation for a decade. And I'm too am like looking like how do I continue to serve and how do I take like what I've learned and through my own struggles and my triumphs and bring that to others, that people that just feel perhaps stuck and don't feel like they can move forward with things. So yeah, man, it's
Yeah.
really admirable that what you're doing. I love it. Yeah, it's cool. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you the billboard question.
Okay.
You're
All
ready for it.
right. All
I
right.
want to build up here. But yeah, so
All right.
I stole this from Tim Ferriss. I always give Tim Ferriss credit. So if he's ever listening to my podcast, which I know he listens to it all the time, but if you had a giant billboard in which a billion people would see this billboard, what would it say? It can be a quote from you, it can be a quote from someone else, it can be a picture, it can be anything. What is going to be on Drew's billboard?
Hmm. Um, I would say I was thinking something along the lines of anything is possible, but that's also I realized that's I think that's the official. I think Iron Man has the rights to that. So no, I mean, and this is kind of just like really shooting from the hip, but I feel like there's a picture I have of like me when I finish Moab 240. And I don't know,
Mm,
I'm not like one to be like, yeah, I'll put a picture of myself up there, but I just like this picture because it's so raw
mm-hmm.
in emotion. And I'm like, mouth wide open, like I just finished and like, yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think it was something along the lines of like never give up and go chase your fucking dreams. Like like
Love it.
something along that. Yeah. I mean, because
Yeah.
that's what it's yeah. That's what it's all about. Like when you run these and everything, you're like, you don't get you go into debt running these, but it's
Mm,
like it's like I feel like you know, in the athletic space right now, I'm kind of living my dream doing this
yeah.
stuff. So
Amazing.
and then it's leading to like me, it's flowing into like me doing that in business too. Like and so
Mm,
it's affecting other areas of life too, which is because
yeah.
it's kind of giving me that confidence. It's like, all right, well, you're doing it with this. Why can't you go do it with that? And it's kind of led me to this point with the mindfulness practice.
That's the reverberations of like how to like, and that's a really great point, is like how are you pulling this from, what is running 300 miles, like how does that translate to everyday life? And it's just a reminder, as you were saying, that like anything's possible. Anything you put your mind to and your heart to, and you know your why and you prepare for it, you can accomplish anything. It's
Yeah.
fucking amazing, man. So
Oh yeah.
Drew, quite the journey,
Yeah.
man. It's a powerful reminder that comebacks are possible. So, through your service, through your struggle, and through your self discovery, you've shown us today that with purpose and persistence, you can take the impossible and inspire others to do the same. Uh, I'm going to give the audience three actionable things that we could take from this story today. Sounds funny, but start small. Even though Drew went
Yeah.
from 50K to a 240, you don't have to do that. You can start small, but what Drew did is he started. So start small, but start now. So whether it's building a mindfulness habit, whether it's getting back in shape, it's tackling a goal that feels out of reach, the hardest part is often just getting to that start line. So start today. Visualize your success. Just like Drew sees himself finishing races before they begin, imagine yourself overcoming obstacles and achieving your goals, and embrace discomfort to grow is the third one. So real growth happens when you push yourself beyond what feels comfortable, lean into the challenge, and discover what you're truly capable of. So if folks want to follow Drew and his journey and learn more about his work, I'm going to put a link to, is your LinkedIn a good place to connect, and your Instagram?
Yeah. Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Those are the main
on
ones
all of
that
them.
I think that's all of them.
Cool, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll get all those links in the show notes, and then if you're on Instagram and you follow Cognitive Fitness Coach there, I'm live right now on Instagram, which is something we've never done before in a podcast, and I'm going to share this with a link to follow Drew on. They'll be tracking you in the race, right? You'll have a tracker. All right,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna follow you in the race, man. I wish you the best of luck. And yeah, dude, what an amazing story. What an amazing journey. This is going to be good stuff. And I think that's it, man. We've talked for a while and it's been great. I could talk to you like all day, but I know you need to get some rest. And
Yeah.
I've got another call coming
Right.
up too. Cool,
Yeah.
man. Awesome stuff. I'm going to stop recording now. Thanks again, Drew.
Yeah.